This podcast is also available via stagelink.com, the groundbreaking new platform for live performing arts. I'm your host, Shanae Stiletto, and my guest on today's Circuspreneur Podcast is circus artist and founder of the Unity Circus Project in Las Vegas, Cornell Freeney. Welcome to the podcast, Cornell.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's exciting to be here.
Oh, thank you. It's a pleasure. I'm so excited to meet you and have you on the podcast. Cornell joined Circus Steam and the Chicago Youth Circus at the age of 13 in search of excitement. He first took interest in tumbling and mini trampoline. In 2005, Cornell started to train on the German wheel. Preparing for the World Championships in Wheel Gymnastics, Cornell practiced every day before and after school. After 2 years of training, he competed in Salzburg, Austria. There, he placed seventh all around, sixth in spiral, and second in vault. Winning four gold medals, Cornell has also shown success in national competitions. Upon graduating from high school in 2008, he started his career in German wheel on ice, performing for Royal Caribbean Cruise Line. Understanding the importance of education, later that year he enrolled into Illinois State University. Along with earning a degree in elementary education, he was able to grow his circus skills through Illinois State's Gamma Phi circus program. Since graduating, Cornell has been coaching circus acts and performing on and at various stages and arenas. Wonderful, amazing. It's so
Ooh.
wonderful. How is halftime season treating you, Cornell?
Oh man, it's I always tell people that it's kind of like feast or famine. It's like in the beginning, you're like looking and trying to connect with the different people who book the games, but it's like sometimes a lot of the shows that I'm used to, a lot of times you want to plan in advance and you already know where you're working like 6 to 8 months in advance. A lot of times with halftime shows, sometimes it can be like that, or sometimes it can be, hey, what are you doing in 2 days? We need you to fly out to Memphis or to that. So it's up and down. It's like you kind of wait for the whole season to shake out to really know, like, okay, was it a good one, or ooh, did I wish I got more gigs on that one? But my goal is 25 so far. I think I have 10 booked, so I'm hoping to, get the rest of those throughout the season. So yeah, I'd say it's going well. We're off to a solid start.
You are like literally everywhere. I was watching your Instagram. I'm like, you are doing all sorts of halftime everywhere. I love like your Chicago Bulls, obviously, because you are
Yeah.
like local Chicago, which is like fabulous and amazing. Like I've done a lot of halftime shows too, like in the past, but I haven't done any in like recent history. But yeah, I've done like, I don't know if I've ever done the Chicago Bulls though. That would just be
Hmm.
so great and amazing. The energy must just be like incredible inside of there.
Yeah, it's crazy because like, being from Chicago, I used to like grow up and yeah, I don't think I ever went to a Bulls game before I performed that one, but I would always see the
Oh,
United Center or see those different like staples in Chicago, like the Chicago Theater. But once I performed there, I'm like, wow, I remember as a kid seeing that and now I've performed there like several times or whatever it is. So it is very like it's very like honor and humbling moment.
it's a lot of energy performing at a halftime show. Like you come out, it's halftime. People are kind of walking. People are also kind of present. There's energy
Hmm.
there. The cheerleaders are sometimes there. They're like,
Yeah.
saying lovely, fun things to you, like the energy. And then you've
Hmm.
got to kind of like pull this focus in. And we're like these
Hmm.
little tiny, kind of circus acts that are coming into this really big stage. And there's all these
Right.
lights. I mean, it's pretty epic. The energy, it's really
Hmm.
wild. I loved it.
It's like just you on the center court with like anywhere between 20 to 50,000 people watching you for that 5 minutes. It's like it is it's like yeah, it's a lot of energy at one time. I love it.
That's so great. Well, congratulations on halftime season, and I hope that you meet your goal
Yeah, thank
of
you.
booking those gigs because you're phenomenal. And I can see, like, kind of like your thread in your journey through halftime is fantastic. And for those listening in, there is a halftime circuit. I mean, I can't talk about this enough. I know some lifers in the halftime
Hmm.
movement where they have just been solidly booked for decades
Hmm. Exactly.
for halftime. So like Cornell is no slouch, but Cornell, I met you or I heard of you. I feel like I met you, but I heard of you and I got acquainted with you working at Circuit Team and performing for the Circus Team, which is the social circus in Chicago for the annual benefit and gala just not that long ago. And your name came up so much while I was there, and everyone at Circus Team just loves you, and they were like, you have to speak to Cornell. He's in Las Vegas. He's doing beautiful and amazing things in the social circus fear. And he's very inspiring, and you should support his efforts and what he's doing to bring the community accessible circus arts. And I was like, that's so wild because I don't really hear about any social circus here in Vegas. And
Mhm.
I know that there maybe are programs, so I don't want everybody that's listening in like, oh, there is other social circuses. How can you say that? However, they're not really on my radar, and so I'm glad that Circus Team put you on my radar. And so I'd love to do a deep dive into your efforts, Cornell, and like kind of starting a little bit backwards, like your entry into social circus. You started circus kind of late, you were 13
Mhm.
when you started, which is kind of old. I mean, like I started gymnastics when
Yeah.
I was like 7, 8, almost 9, and that was old.
Mhm.
And then, you started through a program, that was gifted through the community, and then you became this really successful, German wheel gymnast, which is also great because we both come from like the competitive gymnastics world, which I love that we share that. And I'd love to, go into a little bit of that for listeners too that are not very familiar. I feel like the German wheel industry community is like always happening, but it's like out there.
Mhm. Yeah,
It feels
exactly.
like it's like this own universe. It's so popular. It's so out there. I wanted to ask you if you think that it'll maybe ever become like an Olympic sport. That was like one of my big questions for you. But to go
Mhm.
and to start into that, Cornell, lead us through like your development within social circus, and how it impacted you, and what it was like competing in German wheel gymnastics.
Yeah, ooh, that's a lot. I'll try to keep up with all of that. But yeah, so it's like I joined the tumbling team in Chicago, and like I guess before the tumbling team, I was at that age in Chicago where it's like, hey, what are you gonna do? Who are your friends? Who are those people? And it's really easy to fall into the wrong crowd because there's a lot of those crowds out there. You can go into any lunchroom cafeteria at any high school, middle school, you can find those different groups. But to me, I was like, I want something different. I want to find, I want to not get in trouble. I didn't like being in trouble. I didn't like disappointing my grandma and my mom. Like my grandma one time, she told me in fifth grade, she said, Cornell, I'm appalled at you. And I had no idea what that word meant, but I could just see her face. And I was just like, ooh, okay. I never want her to call me Paul again, whatever this word is. I don't want her to say that to me. So it was like then I started trying to find the different, like, okay, what can I do to stay out of trouble? And there's this guy named Adam in my class, and he was like, hey, I'm going to this tumbling team. You should go check it out. And I always wanted to learn how to do flips and things. So I was just like, oh, okay, yeah, let's go and try it out. So I went to the tumbling team, and I was doing the very basics, as a gymnast yourself. I was doing like forward rolls on the floor, log rolls, everything that you need to be doing in the beginning. But I was just kind of like, nah, I'm not learning fast enough. He's doing back tucks and I'm doing rolling on the floor. And like you said, it is like 12 seems young, but it's late to start a sport or anything like that. So I was like late in the game there. And so when I did my first competition, I got second place and third place in like regional and citywide. And most people would be like, oh, congrats, that's awesome. But I was 12 years old and I was competing against 6 year olds. And there was still a 6 year old who kicked my butt. And I was like, I'm on the second place podium and he's first place, but I'm still taller than him. So it was kind of like, I was like, okay, I can't really celebrate this. This doesn't feel like a victory. And so I still wanted more. And my mom had told me about the circus program. She's like, you should go try it out. You should go try it out. And she had told me about it years before, or maybe not years before, but she had told me about it before. And I was always like, nah, I don't want to be a clown, not interested. But once that 6 year old kicked my butt, I was like, okay, you know what? Every time I've gone to see the circus, they do the flips and things that I want to learn how to do. So what if I go to the circus, learn how to do flips, and then come back to competing? And that was my plan going into it. But once I went inside the circus space, it was just so much going on for my brain in a great way because it's hard for me to focus on and just stay with one thing because I get bored easily. I'm like, okay, what's the next? But when I walked into that space, it was like you seen people on aerials, you seen people doing acro. We didn't have German wheel at the time, but there were people tumbling. There was this little 5 year old kid. He was like spinning a plate on a stick, and I was like, what sort of sorcery is this? Like, what's going on? But there was just so much from my mind. It was just like I was at a little like activity buffet, and it was like perfect because I can get a little bit of all of those things. And so then I started trying circus things. I fell in love with it. I learned how to do, flips that I wanted to do and beyond. And at that point, I was like, hey, I found my home. I don't need to go back to compete. And like, this is my people. I found a positive social group. I found all those activities to keep me engaged. And I was like, yes, this is where I want to be. Fast forward to 2005. I was 15 at the time. And then we had a coach come over from Germany. His name was Wolfgang Beansel. And he was moving to Chicago, and he was going to be teaching at our circus. And we were doing a show together. And it was like the teenagers. We were performing at a private school, and he was also going to be the highlight to get that program started. So we're doing our tumbling, flipping over each other, like we're having a great time. And then it's his time to perform, and like we had never even heard of a German wheel. So we saw him rolling, we saw him doing his act, and we were just like blown away. And I was just like, I don't know if everybody else had the same feeling that I had, but I was like, that looks dangerous. I want to try it. Like, I want to do that. And I think he kind of looked at me and was like, oh, well, this kid knows how to move his body. He has some air awareness. Let's get him on the wheel. So then we all started training, but I got special training. I would go before school and after school. It would be like 5 a.m. that I would go to training, and then I would go to school and then come back and do more training with people and then also by myself. So he invested a lot of time into me there. And then he was like, hey, do you want to compete? There's a thing called the World Championships in Wheel Gymnastics. You should do it. So I was just starting out with 2 years of training. And like one of the things that I like after looking back on my history is like me saying yes to opportunities that kind of led me to places. And so when he said, like, do you want to do this? I was like, never been out of, I think, had I been out of the country, I think I'd been out once. So I got the bug. No, I hadn't been out of the country, but I was just like, yes, okay, let's go ahead and do this. I couldn't throw a dart. I couldn't point to Salzburg on the map, but yeah, I want to go there. Like wherever we can go, let's do it. So I went to that competition after 2 years of training. And again, my tumbling background really helped me out. And so that's why I was able to get the silver medal in vault. But yeah, it was just a really cool opportunity for me to go and like, I said, oh, I started in competitive tumbling. I went away from it, but then somehow found my way back into competition, which wasn't my main thing. I didn't say yes to the competition. I said yes to the travel, which leads me to where I am today.
Oh my God, that's like amazing. Like, how many things had to fall into place for you to become who you were meant to be? I mean, with him coming from Germany and,
Hmm.
bringing this very specific, special apparatus, to Chicago. I mean, it's just
Right.
really wild, the kismet of it all. And throughout that, too, what we were speaking about prior to the podcast, Cornell, you have asthma. So, you were also gaining all of this really unique skill and becoming this gymnast and this German wheel specialist and being a true athlete while also having asthma. What was that? How did that affect you? Or did it actually affect you at all? Were you, did that help you? I mean, did you think
Hmm.
that it maybe made you healthier and maybe would you have, been impacted more by your asthma had you not done German wheel, had you not been so athletic?
I think, I think, as you're saying that, I'm like, yeah, I guess it did kind of give me that chip on my shoulder to be like, oh, well, you think I can't do it? Watch me go and do it. And I have to compete hard, just as hard, if not harder than everybody else. And like when I was in high school, I was excited and I was trying to do different things and trying to find different groups of people to hang out with. And then I was also becoming interested in girls more. And I was like, I want to join the football team because everybody likes a football player. And my mom was just like, nope, you can't join the football team. I'm not going to let you do it because you have asthma. And I was like, no, I can do it. But I think she was like, I don't think it's going to last very long. So I went and I tried out for the football team, which I made it. But then it just took up too much of my time and it took me away from circus. And then there was also all of these like extra push ups and running laps that seemed pointless. And I was just like, this isn't as fun anymore. Let me go back to doing circus. So I didn't let the asthma stop me. I was successful there. But it was just that whole thing of like, no, I can't say can't. I can't let this be a thing that stops me. I have to let this be the thing that motivates me. And so if that means, it made me more responsible, I have to make sure I have my asthma inhaler always with me at times. So yeah, definitely pushed me to go harder than other people at times, I guess.
I think that it did. I bet it did. And speaking along the lines of being competitive, before you went into like the circus world, what do you think about German will? And I was actually thinking about this, like watching your videos and thinking about, like how popular German will is, the competitive space for it too, in terms of it becoming potentially like pole sport is trying to become Olympic sport. You had
Mhm.
breakdance, aerial arts is now also too kind of looking to be maybe like aerial gymnastics or aerial
Mhm.
acrobatics and, get some type of certification too. But what do you think about that in terms of German will? Is that a topic in the German will gymnastics community?
Definitely. Yeah,
It
it's definitely
is.
a topic. It's one of those
Mm.
things that like when I started in 2005, they were having conversations about what do we need to do in order to make it an Olympic sport. And I was too young, didn't really pay attention at the time. But it's something about the number of countries and different things like that. And so Wolfgang, who I mentioned earlier, he's really pioneering the charge on that. And you see at different competitions, you see, oh well, there were this many teams last time, and now Colombia's here, and now there's this other like country who's got their small team, but you can see that the sport is growing. And I actually stepped away from competitions because I was like, ooh, I like to travel. So we did get to be, with competitions, I did get to travel. My last one, unfortunately, it was in Chicago, so I didn't get to travel for that competition. But you do get to travel with the competition. But I was like, ooh, you know what? I get to go to the Caribbean and I get to go to Europe and be on cruises and perform, and I get paid for that. So I was like, I don't know, maybe I want to spend more time doing that route there. So I stepped away from competing, but I did say if it ever became an Olympic sport, that would be the thing to pull me out of my competition hiatus and get me back to training for that level of athleticism, I guess.
Bet you it will. I mean, I'm also from a non-Olympics gymnastics sport, which, we're very salty over that. And we never let it go.
Mm,
Because we can't go to the Olympics, and kind of like what that does to you when you're in gymnastics and your friends and are going to the Olympics, and
mm,
you kind of like don't have that same journey. But I was thinking about that for you. Would you be interested in coming back into the competitive space if that were
yeah.
to happen? I mean, you see with breakdance now, so many folks like got pulled from performing into competing again so that they could have a
Hmm.
shot at going to the Olympics, and it kind of seems like people are bouncing back and forth, I think, more than they ever have before. And,
Hmm.
even if the sport got in for one Olympics, like we see with breakdance, that's
Yeah.
it. And at least it would be like that one opportunity. But I was really curious for you about that, just because I'm from a similar sport that we want to be an Olympic sport so badly. And we've been
Hmm.
pushing for it for so many years. And, I have faith that one day it will happen. I don't think that I'll be in the space to be able to jump back in like you,
Yeah.
Cornell, but at least I'll have somebody to support.
Yeah, it would definitely for me. It would be almost like that saying yes to opportunities, and it would be my ego saying yes, I'm going to go and compete. But I would get humbled, I'm sure, very quickly by some 12-year-old who they're just taking the sport so far that I would just be like, yes, I get the participation trophy. But that little kid is like ridiculously skilled. So, but I would still go for my participation trophy.
I'll be there to judge. You be there to
Yeah.
compete. You'll get your participation trophy, and I'll be there to
Hmm.
judge.
Yeah. Right.
We'll have our evolution of our roles, which I'm totally fine with having. So speaking to your evolution from competition into the performing arts space, how did competition kind of influence and inform your ability to go into the performance space now? Because not all folks that come into circus have that same experience. They weren't competitive gymnasts and coming into the circus arts. Did you find that pretty easy for you? Coming into this industry, and kind of finding your way as an artist and finding opportunities. I would like to point out as well that you do German wheel on ice. And for those that are
Mhm.
not familiar with German wheel is a really big apparatus. It is scary. I always say it's the original steer wheel, for folks that are, really familiar, with those
Mhm.
type of apparatuses that are very circular in nature. And so it's a really big thing to be balancing out there on the ice, but you do it so well, and it's amazing. I have not seen a lot of that. So you've really, I think, found your niche. And so I'd love to discuss a little bit of this before we go into your efforts, of bringing social circus to Las Vegas and how important that is to the community.
Mhm. Yeah, so going from, it's actually interesting because yes, I started with competitive tumbling, but I did it for maybe like 6 months. So I didn't really get a lot of the structure and things like that. I got a piece of it with the body awareness, but then more so I started in the performance space with the German wheel and then adapted that to the competitive aspect. So I actually would do things. I remember getting deductions, like after I finished my routine, my coach would be like, Cornell, you did the performance hand. Because there's a move where you hold your hand out, you present, and this is how you would do for a show, but then this is how you would do for competition. And because I had my hand turned the wrong way, fingers weren't right, they were like, oh, deduction for that. And I was just like, okay, you know what? I'm okay with it. So I think it was that, like, I think in terms of, if you look at other, no shade to other German wheel people, like for me, because I came from the competitive aspect, I think my skill level is a lot higher. And then being able to like merge the performance with it, where some people, I think they may have started off as recreational, so you don't get that like, ooh, this is like world champion level of skill. You get kind of like, oh, okay, they know how to do some things that are cool and exciting. But I think that's how I think I've been able to stand apart, because like I'll do, yeah, we'll leave it at that. I don't want to dig myself into a hole with the German wheel community.
So moving on to social circus.
There we go. Nice segue.
Moving on to your Unity project here in Las Vegas. Why is social circus? I mean, you obviously are from the social circus movement and community, but here in Las Vegas, like I said before, I have not seen a lot of social circus. And so, what has inspired you, Cornell, to start a social circus movement here? For the community and for the youth in Las Vegas.
For me, it's all about accessibility and having the opportunity to do things, because I always, I talk to people today and I say, hey, if that circus hadn't been there, then I wouldn't be here. And so I don't know what I would be doing, but it wasn't even an option for me to, like, where were they? Even if it were like in the 4 block radius that I grew up in, there were no circuses there, but it could have been one on the 6th block, but my family didn't travel that far. So we wouldn't have had that, or it would have been way over, like out of our price range. So we wouldn't have, again, another barrier. So to me, I think about like how much it has impacted my life, how much, the number of doors that it's opened for me. And so if I can open half as many doors or one door, that's where I want to be like, okay, well, I've given back to something that has given me so much. And so it is exciting when I go to a school or a community center and they say, oh, you want to do circus? Okay, what, and it's actually in Vegas, it's actually easier to pitch because in Chicago, if I say, hey, I want to teach circus here. And I remember a lady, me and the executive director now of Circus Team, we were at a school and we were like, we want to do circus. And she just gave us this look and I could see she was like, elephants, clowns with big makeup, and that's where her mind was thinking. But here in Vegas, I say, hey, I want to teach your kids how to do circus, and they're like, oh, kind of what we see in Circus Soleil and on the Strip. I'm like, yes, exactly that. So a lot of the some of the education is already done. So now all I have to do is tell them the perks of it, how it's going to help the whole child, and we're not a competitive space, but we want to help them find their home and develop their identities and feel good just about that, who they are, and find their safe spaces.
Oh, that's beautiful. And what do you think, what have been kind of the barriers that you experienced in starting a social circus or getting children involved in a social circus here in Las Vegas that's maybe unique for Vegas, other than it being accessible and folks being a bit more attuned and open to it? But I've seen a lot of the fact that, kids, even though it is in their backyards, they don't have a lot of accessibility to circus. And that kind of
Hmm.
breaks my heart. It kind of reminds me, of Disney. I was speaking to an educator on the podcast not that long ago about they did this documentary about Disney and they saw that the children that lived the closest to Disneyland were the least likely to be able to go to Disneyland because they
Hmm.
couldn't afford it. So, I mean, how many of the kids you would say in your programs have seen a circus even here in town?
A lot of them have not seen it. That's exactly true. A lot of them haven't done it. A lot of them haven't seen it. And like funding is always going to be the easiest thing to like point our fingers at, to say, hey, it's just not there. And one of the things that I started my program in September of 2020. And at the time everybody was losing their jobs and losing their homes. And, so there was a lot of a lot of loss going on during the pandemic. And, I was saying like, hey, I had been saying I want to start this for years and years and years. What am I going to let stop me from getting this program going? Like, I grew up poor, so money wasn't going to be the thing that was going to stop me. And so I was just like, hey, you know what? If I don't make any money off of the program, that's okay. I want to do something that feels good. Nobody else is working, but I can go out and, I was naive at the time. I was like, yeah, I'll just get a couple juggling, I'll get a couple juggling props. I have a wheel. I just go and set up shop and, invite people to come there. And it actually, it did turn out. We were able to find ways to like follow a lot of the social distancing protocols, but it was more so, it was like me and a couple of my friends, and we were just like, hey, we're not, all we want to do is we want to give to this community. So let's just show up and do it. And whoever comes, they'll come. And like the saying goes, if you build it, they will come. And I think some of it was because they didn't have to pay for the programming, which again, for me, for somebody who like, that's the way that I was able to like be where I am, because if I had to pay for it, I wouldn't be here. So to be able to go there and see, okay, well, this many kids we've interacted with, and it wasn't like, ooh, okay, we weren't, there was no sense of greed. There was no sense. I didn't even, the staff who I had at that time, there was no even like, how do we pay the staff? It was just like, hey, we want to do circus, so let's do circus. And yeah, so we made that happen.
What kind of support do you need to harness your social circus here in Las Vegas, Cornell?
One of the, I guess some of the space is the first thing, So when I
Mm.
came to Vegas, I was like, okay, where am I gonna do this circus? And I was looking at a few different buildings to rent out, and like right off the top, it was like $5,000 a month, and I'm like, okay, well, we're out of it on that. So then I was like, okay, well, there's got to be, I don't like to say can't, and I read this book, and the book really framed my mind to, instead of saying I can't do something, it's like, okay, well, how can I do it? So then it was like, okay, well, how can I share space? And so I partnered with the YMCA for a number of years, and then we were able to share the space there. But really, like being able to have that program. So we had a mobile program, is what I would say, because even if we build it at the YMCA in Spring Valley, there's like, okay, well, how can we access that other community? There are all these like empty gyms around, around any city in America, you can find an empty gym. And like circus is very transformative. It's easy to turn a space into that circus space. So, being able to share spaces with those communities that, that already have that available is one thing. And then one of the barriers that I found is I was like, oh, Vegas is going to be a great place for circus. So there's a lot of circus artists there. It'll be great. The nature of a circus artist is like, one of the things that I found myself is you're always on the road. So to me, it was like my education brain came in, and it was like, okay, well, how do I build a system where I can just have these phenomenal circus people come in, and they can still, like, they can use what we have, but then also contribute what they have in terms of the raw skills of like whether it's teaching gymnastics or whatever that is, but still making it fun, which is the part of that, that unity that we wanted to do, bringing kids together. And it's not about who's going to be the best, but it's like, hey, do you feel good? Hey, did you try hard? Were you challenged? So space, and I think getting the word out to the community, because there are so many people who I saw at the different circus spaces who had no idea what I was doing. And then it was kind of like, okay, well, why don't they know? And do I feel uncomfortable? Am I stepping on toes if I go into this space and say, hey, are you interested in coaching? So kind of just building, really like building that community aspect of, hey, we are all trying to do the same thing. Let's do it together, and we can kind of share what you know and share what I know, and just that collaborative effort that we know that's already baked into circus.
Oh, that's beautiful, Cornell. Well, we're at the very closing of the podcast, and I just wanted to ask you, how can the community find you for your social circus project, and how can they directly support you after they find you?
So you can find our organization by going to our website, which is www.unitycircusproject.org. And we're constantly doing things around in different communities. So really just like joining a mailing list and seeing kind of what we're up to. And if you are in Vegas and you're like, hey, I think that program I think it'll be a great addition to our school, our community center, send me an email. Let's figure out how we can work together and bring the circus to your space. Because I did say we were a mobile circus. And I actually used to fit so many things inside of my sedan, so I'd have wheels, an aerial rig, and all the manipulation props. So it's very easy to transport a circus. And then if you want to support what we're doing, go to the donate page or contribute page on our website. And then please, yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. Please, everyone, donate, contact Cornell, and you can volunteer to support his Unity Social Circus project, which is amazing. I'm so grateful that you are taking the initiative to provide this type of project and this type of support to the community. Cornell, this is a really beautiful effort. I loved every bit of it when I very first heard of it, and I'm so excited to have you on the podcast and to celebrate the hard work that you're doing because we all know that this is a labor of love and
Yes,
that
ma'am.
we need a lot of support when we put our love into things that are important to us. And this is something that should be important to all of us. So I lift you up and I wish you all the best. And I, look forward to continuing to see your program grow. And I know that it will. And community, remember again, reach out, support Cornell and lift up his project, and let's support him and get him the support that he needs here in Las Vegas on the ground. And thank you all for tuning in to this episode of the Circuspreneur Podcast. It is also available on stagelink.com, stagelync.com, the groundbreaking new platform for live performing arts that provides unmatched access and connection to this vibrant world of shows and entertainment. If you're a professional in the performing arts, visit stagelink.pro slash visit stagelink.com/pro, excuse me. Stagelink Pro, STAGELYNCPRO offers industry professionals higher visibility, networking opportunities, and tools to support and enhance their careers. Until next time, everyone, I'm your host, Shanae Stiletto. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Circuspreneur Podcast. Please like and subscribe to the Circuspreneur Podcast and tune in to the next episode.